Hello, everyone. We are just giving a couple of minutes for everyone to join, and we will kick off the webinar in just a moment. Okay, I still see there's more and more people joining, so we're just going to give one more minute, I think, for everyone to attend, and we'll kick off. Okay, hello and welcome, everyone. There are less than 3 months left till Google Analytics sunset on 1st of July. So have you made the transition to Google Analytics 4 yet? And have you stored your Universal Analytics data? If you're using Google Universal Analytics and are wondering about the implications of the sunset, then this is the webinar for you. Now, this is the second webinar in the series of our GA sunset campaign. And if you have attended the previous one, most content will be similar. So we will just share some new developments from Google as well that have happened since. But feel free to skip it, I think, if you attended our previous one. And yeah, I just see there was something in the chat. The webinar will be recorded. We will send the recording and some useful material to all registrants in the next few days after the webinar, so you can share it with all your colleagues and anyone that could not attend. So yes, we will record the webinar. And during this webinar, we will highlight several issues that you will encounter with your historical web analytics data when moving to Google Analytics 4. And we will suggest some solutions how to overcome them. And we will also have a Q&A session at the end, but feel free to submit your questions anytime throughout this webinar. And I see some of you are already active in chat, so we would encourage active participation, and we will leave at least 20 minutes for the end of the webinar, and we'll try to answer all your questions. Now, some information about us. My name is Linas Zemaitis. I am VP Marketing here at Watergraph. I'm in marketing for over 10 years now, and I have used Google Analytics for over 10 years. So I have some experience in the subject, and obviously being in the marketing industry for so long, I may be able to share some insights. And joining me is Laurynas Arminas, who is our user researcher. So for the last 5 years, Laurynas has been helping digital marketing agencies and businesses with their marketing and client reporting at Watergraph. And we also have Karolis Malinauskas, who is our product manager. He's been in Watergraph for over 2 years. And this time really help him to understand the challenges that our users are facing with data. And now that the GA sunset is coming, he will introduce you how you could avoid losing your historical Google Analytics data, and obviously the Google Analytics 4 data, as well as there are some issues with data retention. And also he will show you some examples how you could easily visualize the data without even having a specific data warehouse knowledge. So I hope you're excited. I am certainly. So let's kick off, and a bit more about Watergraph and what makes us qualified to talk about the subject. So as mentioned previously, briefly, Watergraph is a platform that helps to connect, visualize, and share marketing data. We have integrations with over 40 sources, and Google Analytics and Google Analytics 4 is obviously some of them. And we also provide data export and data transfer to Google BigQuery capability. And at the moment, we have over 1,000 customers that use Google Analytics sources and integrations. So we know a bit about the subject and the challenges that they are facing. And before we proceed with our presentation, I would like to start with the poll. Now, this is we have run this poll previously during a previous webinar, so it will be very interesting to compare the metrics. And the question is, are you planning to move to Google Analytics 4 after the sunset of Universal Analytics? And we will launch the poll. You should see it appearing on your screen. And we will just give a couple of minutes or for everyone to answer. I think nearly all of you, we are nearing the completion, and the options are, yes, we will be using Google Analytics 4, we are not sure yet, or no, we will be using a different platform, and please specify in the comments which one, if you don't mind. Okay, I think most of the participants and attendees have answered, so we'll end the poll and share the results. So unsurprisingly, 93 of the attendees have decided that they will be using Google Analytics 4 after the sunset of Universal Analytics, and 6% are still not sure. And only 1% will be using a different tool. So this is interesting, as during our last webinar, we had 91% attendees indicating that they will use Google Analytics 4. So now seems like the closer it is to the sunset, the more certain all of you are that you will indeed be using Google Analytics 4 as a web analytics platform. So thank you for answering that. And I will now hand over to Laurynas to talk a bit more about the transition.
Thanks, Linus. So I would like to start off by saying that dealing with data in general, to me, felt like being stuck in the middle of a pond on a boat with no paddle. And the water is pretty much like a data that you can easily drown in if you don't have the correct understanding on how to deal with it. So you need to get to your destination, which is on the shore, but you have no paddle. I convinced myself that having no knowledge of coding and knowing no SQL queries, I would never be able to transfer data or even work with data warehousing in any way. Later, I found out that was absolutely incorrect. And in fact, 4 months ago with Watergraph, I made my very first own data transfer independently. It was actually for an old website that I managed. And the reason why I needed to transfer the data is because I wanted to save it from disappearing simply because of Google. And naturally, I thought, why should I worry about the deadline that's actually quite far away? But I'm actually quite glad that I did transfer the data, because I found out that if a website, for example, has 12 years worth of data, it will take me around 3 months to actually fully transfer it somewhere. So if we go on to the next slide, your Google Universal Analytics properties, known as GA4 properties, will stop collecting data in just less than 3 months. And more historical data will be completely lost if you don't transfer it somewhere in the upcoming year. Google does very little to help their users in the process and offers no simple solution. Seems like a long time until we need to take action, but just like in my example, websites that have quite a history, they might take months to move fully. And people who need to look at performance reports usually want to look at them right here, right now, so they don't have much time to spare. And once it comes to importance of saving your data, I want to emphasize a couple of things. If you create reports that analyze an entire year and compare to the previous year, for that you will need 2 years worth of data without any gaps in between. If you do not transfer your data from old properties, you will definitely have gaps in the reports, as can be seen in the example just on that slide. Let's take an example of a marketing manager whose one particular business as a client basically demands a report at the end of each calendar year, which should be presented to the board of directors. However, embarrassingly, this year, the board saw the comparisons in the report to be missing. And this happened because the marketing manager, in fact, forgot about the deadline set by Google. And if we go on to the next one, we have accurate forecasting. So in fact, once it comes to forecasting, if you want accurate figures to be displayed, you need a lot of historical data to be present. Only then would you know how to get an idea of the direction that your business will be trending in. Even if you do not do any forecasting at the moment and only intend to do some in the future, you would still pretty much need to have an extensive historical data library pretty much. Now, the same marketing manager has another duty. When working for this one particular client, the business has been receiving a dashboard each Wednesday, which predicts how much revenue each month is going to bring to that particular business. But after the Google Analytics sunset, the board of directors found out that that particular forecasting model is quite inaccurate. And that was because the new forecasting model was only using 1 year's worth of data to make its guesses. It would be more accurate if there was more data, obviously, but the marketing manager thought that 14 days would be enough to move 10 years worth of data from that website. Well, it wasn't. And if we take the last example, which would be whether your website is actually, if you want to analyze top selling products, services, or whether it's just traffic you're analyzing, top performing pages, you will not be able to see any of your old data. Some websites have collected over 15 years worth of information, and it might be gone in a blink of an eye. Imagine you want to know what your all-time best-selling products were, your top visited pages since the launch of the website. If you don't move the data, you won't be able to check that at all. Now, let's go back to the marketing manager one last time. The board of directors sat the manager down and said that they have one very important job left to do for them. In this environment, in this hectic economic situation right now, the business needed to reevaluate the profit and wanted to see the best selling products within the website since they opened up. The manager obviously was not able to deliver it, and they had to let that manager go, simply because those Google deadlines were missed. So there's no simple way to move the data directly from Universal Analytics into BigQuery. Where do I start? What exact steps do I need to take might be some of the questions that are coming up. The first one is obvious. So we need to make sure that the property is converted from GA3 to GA4 correctly. And that includes having your custom goal set up, having your audience, and making sure your event logic makes sense. I won't go through too much detail here simply because Google has prepared a checklist that you can double check on your Google Analytics, and it outlines all the steps that are required for you to make this smooth transition. And on the next slide, you'll also see some additional steps that advertisers would need to take for their properties to be migrated correctly.
Okay, so thanks, Laurinas, for providing all these analogies and all that story. So I think now it's time for another poll. And the question this time is, have you looked into any solutions for storing your Universal Analytics and Google Analytics for data yet? So you should see it appearing in a screen. So yeah, please answer. And again, it will be interesting to compare to the results from our previous webinar in March, whether the trends have changed. Okay, we'll give it a couple more seconds for more of you to answer. Okay, I think we can wrap it up. Most of you have answered, and it's actually interesting. So 23% of the webinar attendees are saying that they have already looked into solutions to store their Universal Analytics and Google Analytics for data. And compare that to 2 months ago when we did the webinar in March, which is now a higher figure, because back then only 13% of the attendees of the webinar, which was a similar number of people that attended the previous time and this one, said that they have looked into it. So an increase from 13% to 23%. So it seems like as the sunset deadline is approaching, more of you are definitely looking into solutions for storing, but still 77% of the attendees said that they have not looked into any storing. So yeah, I think what comes next will be very relevant for you, and we will highlight some of the potential solutions for data storage. And yeah, I see chat is firing, and yeah, BigQuery is getting mentioned as some of the options by most, which is interesting.
So let me bring back to some of the options that we will have. Firstly, I hope that my examples from before convinced you enough that saving data would be crucial, and we can do it in the following way. My suggested option would be to move your historical data from GA4 into a data warehouse known as BigQuery, which is a centralized data warehouse which would allow you to not only process data, but also to put it into actionable business insights. And it can also later be visualized in quite a simple, digestible format. If the technicalities might sound complex behind this entire process, Watergraph's data transfer intends to make this easy. You wouldn't have to worry about the specifics, just selecting the property from which you want to export the data, and we'll try to handle the rest. You'll see how to achieve this in just a couple of minutes. There, of course, are other options for you to export the data, and on the surface, they might seem quite simple, but they might have a couple of limitations. So the first one is exporting data directly from Google into Excel, which is possible, but the drawback with this method is that you'll be limited to 5,000 rows. Additionally, you would still have to manually clean up the data inside the Excel file if it was to be used for any further analysis. Doing this for tens of websites, I don't think that would be sustainable and might cost you not only a lot of time, but also a lot of nerves as well. And the last option you would have is if you have a Watergraph account already and you have some existing reports, you can export information from those reports directly into Excel. But to carry out any more detailed analysis, you would still have to move that data somewhere. And now if we go further, I want to bring you back to the visual example that I gave before. Having a paddle and getting out of that puddle would be fairly easier than actually using your own hands. In theory, that's what Watergraph's own data transfer intends to kind of do. Help you get out of that confusing data pond without getting wet, and you don't need to worry about what's inside the water as we'll try to handle the technicalities. Or in other words, being a bit more official, easily transfer, save, and later visualize your data from Google Universal Analytics, or many other different channels that we can help transfer data from as well, just by the way. And going into the benefits specifically, BigQuery Data Warehouse can bring, I have a couple of things I would like to mention. So first of all, you can save your Universal Analytics data from GA3, and that's the thing I emphasize the most today. Another thing to mention is GA4 only retains data for 14 months, user-related data. So if you want older data, the only option is to use BigQuery or other data warehousing solutions to store it. The sooner you set the transfer up, the more data you would manage to preserve from GA4. Also, API reporting platforms run into limitation of API call quotas that can be easily exceeded if you're requesting large time periods repetitively. This would translate into you seeing errors instead of numbers on your widgets, for example, or the reports might be loading very slowly. But once the data is inside BigQuery, API limits and the speed issues no longer become a problem. Also, having the data inside the warehouse allows you to aggregate it or run any more complex calculations to drive your business decisions. And I would like to recap the things that we spoke about. Your Universal Analytics properties will stop collecting data in less than 3 months from now. Historical data for Universal Analytics will be gone in just over a year from now. And also, GA4 has user-related data retention period for a maximum of 14 months. So what actions should be taken to address those most important things as far as analytics are concerned, in my opinion? First, make sure you have the new GA4 property set up correctly. Then find an efficient way to migrate Universal Analytics data and store it safely. And then important thing is give yourself enough time to migrate the data. And you might hate me for this, but let's go back to the visual example of the boat in a pond. And the message that I want to convey here is that Watergraph gives you a paddle to navigate out of that puddle before the storm comes on. The storm I'm referring to here would be the sunset of Google Analytics and them actually deleting your data. And I don't want you to fall into the same trap as the marketing manager who made 3 consecutive mistakes and was let go for my examples before. So give yourself enough time to save your data in order to avoid gaps in your performance reports. And do not look embarrassed in front of the person who you are reporting to. And then I'll give the word back to Linus.
Yeah, so thanks again, Laurinas, for all the analogies. Definitely, I would encourage as well everyone to give more time to export your data, depending obviously on the nature of your business. You could have even landing page report containing tens of thousands of landing pages if you add more dimensions than obviously the size of that. In terms of rows can run into millions, and that could be no small feat. So obviously the higher your traffic, the more time you'll need to export all that data, and the longer it's going to take. So if you really have high traffic websites, please give yourself plenty of notice, and don't leave it for last couple of weeks, because you may not even have enough time then to get all that data out. And yeah, we'll hand it over to Karolis now, who will show you how Watergraph could potentially help you with your quest of migrating to Google Analytics 4 and saving your historical Universal Analytics data. and also your Google Analytics 4 data, which is only retained for 14 months. So depending if you have set up Google Analytics 4 a couple of months ago, in less than a year, you will already be losing some of your data. So I will hand over to Karolis now for his presentation.
Thanks, Linus, and thanks, Lorena, for all the explanations. And yeah, I will start right away with showing how Photograph can help you. So now you can see my screen and I am in my Photograph account. So what you can do with Photograph is one thing, you can create reports when getting data directly from your source, let's say Google Analytics, Google Analytics 4, Facebook ads, and so on. Also, what you can do with the help of Photograph, you can transfer your data to a data warehouse. Google BigQuery data warehouse is the first destination which you can get data to from your source, but in the near future, of course, you will have more destinations added. So let's start and I will show you how it works. So for example, when you are going from your Photograph account to data transfer function, here you can see that these are two transfers which I have already set up. And I will show you how you can set up a transfer from the scratch. First thing you need to do is to connect the source from which you want to move a data. So just press Manage Sources button, you select the source which you want to use for your data transfer. Let's say I will use Google Analytics. I have already connected my account. And once the source is connected, I can start creating a transfer. First step is I need to select how I would like to connect my BigQuery data warehouse to Photograph, because I have already connected the source from which I will move the data. Now I need to connect a place where I want to move the data. Have in mind that the source will be moved from yours, that the data will be moved from your source to your data warehouse. That's why you need to have not only a Google Analytics, Google Analytics 4, or any other source from which you want to move data, but also data warehouse account ready. So let's say I would like to move data to my BigQuery account. I have already set it up, and I will select one of the BigQuery projects where I want to move the data. So I will select this one. I'll just check the connection if everything is fine. And in the next step, I can move on and select which integration I will use in my transfer. So from which I will get the data. For this reason, I need to have connected account, like I have just showed you before I started creating a transfer. So as an example, I will select Google Analytics, but as you can see, we have more integrations here from which you can move data to your data warehouse. And I am selecting an account and the source, which I have already connected through Source Manager. Next step is I am able to select which data I want to move to my data warehouse. By default, you will see tables which contains metrics and dimensions selected. So this means that if you will not make any change here, all of the data which is here, it will be moved to your data warehouse, but you can deselect some of the information, some of the data if you don't need something. We have made this function in order not to overload your data warehouse, just in case you don't need some of the data which was selected by default. And then if you will want to use the same schema later on, you can just press that you want to save it for the later, and you can just give it a name for that, and you will be able to select from schema templates when you will be creating other transfers. So you will not need to think what you have selected in your previous transfers and which data you want to move and which you don't need. Now you can move to the last step, and you need to give a name for a transfer. So in this field, you will need to add a name, which will be seen in your Photograph transfers list. So I will give this name. And here in destination dataset, you need to add a dataset name, which you will be seeing in your Google BigQuery account. So I will give the same name. You can give different names if you want. It's up for you to decide. Another thing which you will need to do is to select a region where you would like to store a data. So I will select, as an example, Europe. But if you are based in USA, for example, and you would like to have your data stored there, you can select region accordingly. Scheduling option says that your transfer will be updating data every day. So if you will select and start transfer today, transfer will get data based on your backfilling range, which you have selected, and tomorrow the data will be updated with the day from the past. And this will happen every day until you will stop the transfer. And here with the backfilling option, you just need to select from when you want to get the data. So let's say I have started getting my data in my Google Analytics account from 17th of April. I have selected this date. If I have data from 2020 or even earlier days, I can select exact date when I was started to have data in my Google Analytics account. It's up for you. And that's it. I have made all the selections. I can just press create a transfer and I wait for a few seconds, and that's it. The transfer is created. Now what I can do is just sit and wait until all of the data will be in my data warehouse. I will receive an email with information that data is ready, and I can go to my data warehouse to start doing things which I need. And also what you can do with the transfer. So you can see that this is the transfer which I have just created. When you open it, you can see name of the data set, where this data is going, who has scheduled it, which integration account and source is being used, where the data is stored, which schema is being used. If you will decide later on that you want to edit the schema, you can do it. Also, here you will see from when the data is being backfilled. If you need to add more days from the past, also you can do it. And then transfer history, you will see information, what is happening with the data for each day. And when all of those green ticks will be here, the data will be in your data warehouse. And you can go and see what you have gathered there. Another thing which you might want to do is to visualize the data, because what's the point of storing the data if you cannot show it to anyone? And Watergraph can help you there too. And as an example, I have created a report for you to illustrate how it works. For those who have been using Watergraph, you already know how to create the reports, but those who see our tool for the first time, these are reporting environment where you can create widgets with the various data. So for example, this widget, we call it table widget when I have my Google Analytics account connected with the data here. This is a chart widget with data from my Google Analytics. And here is a table widget with data from Google Analytics 4. And what might be interesting for you, after the sunset, you will want to connect data from your data warehouse, where you would have data from your Google Analytics account and your Google Analytics 4 account, because you might be using Google Analytics 4 after the sunset, and you might need to compare the data with data from Google Analytics. So for example, you can do that in the chart widget, or you can do it in the table widget, like here I have done, for example, adding in the same widget Google Analytics data and Google Analytics 4 data. So with Watergraph, you will be able to not only store data in your data warehouse, but also to compare data from your data warehouse, which you will have stored there, and from other sources which you will be using. Or if you will have stored everything in your data warehouse, you can get data directly from there into your reports. So that's how we can help you solve the problems. And if you will be interested, I'm sure that Linus and Laurinus will explain you how you can test our tool out. For those who have already accounts in our app, just feel free to reach out to us and we will help you to test this function and explain you how it works if you will need any help. Thank you so much. And I will give the word to Linus again.
Okay, thanks for a great presentation, Karolis. So just some of the things I would like to highlight is that this feature was really built to be as easy as possible. It's no code that even non-technical users could really sign up for BigQuery and use our data transfer to easily transfer the data there, and then use Watergraph to easily visualize. So once again, I would like to stress, we try to make it as easy as possible so that anyone could do it even without coding knowledge. And I just would like to answer some of the questions in the chat. I think Daniel asked, no, the data will not be migrated from Universal Analytics to GA4 automatically. What will happen is on July 1st, Google Universal Analytics will stop collecting the data, and then you would have to set up Google Analytics 4, and it will just start collecting data from that point onwards. So no, there is no automatic migration of data. And even the exporting data out of Universal Analytics, there is now kind of easy way to do it. Google manual export is quite cumbersome. And that's exactly the point of data transfer, and that's why we try to make it as easy to get the data out of Universal Analytics and to store it safely before it's lost. And yes, your Universal Analytics, I think some of our comments in chat are whether the data will be deleted. Google keeps changing the dates, but yes, the official message from Google is that after some time after the sunset, your Universal Analytics data will be deleted. So the safe solution would be to store it. And some other things to really highlight would be that obviously we all speak about migrating Universal Analytics data to BigQuery and Google Analytics 4 as we have data retention of just 14 months, but there is benefit to migrating more data and having, I would say, a single source of truth data warehouse set up in general. So I would encourage attendees to really think about just even beyond the use case of storing your Universal and GA4 data, but think about the benefits of storing your other advertising channels. So for example, a solution like Watergraph allows you to transfer the data from all the most popular advertising platforms. And if you have that data in a data warehouse, then it becomes very easy to blend it with all the different sources and calculate metrics such as your overall customer acquisition cost and other really blended metrics. And as Laurinas mentioned previously, by owning the data, so once you store the data, you own it and it will not disappear. What these ad platforms often do, they introduce new metrics all the time. They deprecate some of the old metrics. So unless you really store your data, once some advertising format is deprecated, your data may get lost. And even aside from Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, which we know for sure will get lost at some point, or Google Analytics for historical data. So you wouldn't, by storing the advertising platform data as well, you would not be limited by various API limits, and that would really allow a much faster analysis and much more opportunities for blending. And yeah, so we are nearing the end of our presentation, and we will have a proper Q&A session just in a bit, just before we move forward. Yeah, I would like to launch another poll and ask, based on everything what you've seen, would you be interested in requesting a free trial or a demo of Watergraph data transfer feature? And again, we do offer free trials, so you would not be committing to anything that potentially would not work, and there would be opportunities obviously for you to test it out and see if it works for you and with your setup. Okay, we'll give everyone a minute to answer before we move over to the Q&A session. Okay, so we have ended the poll, and you do, if you would like to book a demo straight away and not wait for anyone from Watergraph following up, I will just share a link in the chat of one of our data warehousing specialists that could really help you with data transfer to BigQuery. Okay, and just another thing that we will be sharing some useful resources in the follow-up over the next few days to this webinar. So again, we do hope that you'll find it useful. And for example, steps how to create BigQuery account. And I know it sounds daunting. I'm a marketer, even though I like to call myself a technical marketer. At the start, it really sounded daunting to me, the whole setup of things. But once I went through the process, it is quite a simple, relatively simple thing to do. So if you feel like it's if you feel also a bit scared by the whole BigQuery setup, my suggestion would be to not be. Also, Google, if you just Google BigQuery free trial, Google, I think, also gives some credits if you're new to it. So yes, it does cost some money, but you will also get a discount from Google by joining up, signing up for BigQuery. So yeah, I think that's the end of the presentation. Hopefully you find it useful and educational. And we can go through the chat where thank you for being active, and there are so many, I think, conversations where I'll try to scroll over and pick maybe some of the things that that we could answer there. So yeah, please give me a moment.
I did, in fact, find quite a few questions related to BigQuery pricing in particular. So to answer those ones, BigQuery, as far as pricing goes, it scales with the amount of data that you wish to transport into BigQuery. So it can depend. It can be entirely free. You can fall into the free tier, but you can also be charged a couple of $100 USD for large data volumes. So it really depends. So I would suggest to double check on BigQuery site on their exact pricing.
Oh, okay. So thanks for answering that, Lovrinas, while I scrolled through the chat. And yes, recording of this meeting will be shared with everyone, and we will also upload it to Watergraph YouTube channel. So if you type in Watergraph in YouTube, you will get to recording. Just give us a couple of days to upload it. And yeah, I'm just looking at the Q&A section now, and I see Laurinas and Karolis is typing some of the answers. But for the questions will Google still store site metrics after 14 months, like page view sessions, events? So an anonymous attendee asked this, and the answer is no. So flat out, Google Analytics 4 has data retention of 14 months. So they don't retain any data for longer than 14 months. So again, depending when you set up your property, he may be already losing some data soon, or he perhaps have already lost it. So and some other, so Universal Analytics, again, anonymous attendee asked whether Universal Analytics allow data transfer of all data. So the answer is there is a manual export option, but it's quite cumbersome. And no, Google Universal Analytics does not provide any sort of easy data transfer to Google BigQuery. There is nothing on their side that supports this. And yeah, so again, another question on Google Analytics for data retention. No, all data is not going to be retained for more than 14 months.
There's another question about, and I'll read it word by word. Am I remembering correctly that Google is supposed to be sharing more info on how to export our Universal Analytics data? I seem to recall reading that. So there had been some speculations, and Google had mentioned that they would be more help with this, but as far as we know, they have no solution that they can offer with direct transport of Universal Analytics data into BigQuery. So you can connect GA4 to BigQuery, but Universal Analytics and BigQuery, there's still no options from Google's side to move the historical data. And that is one of the main reasons why we decided to present this solution to you. A couple of more questions coming in.
Okay, I kind of feel like questions are getting a bit repetitive, so there's a lot of them that we already answered. I think Ben Schumitz asked an interesting question in chat. So he's asking if Universal Analytics data is moved to BigQuery and then you connect BigQuery to Watergraph, can you then combine the all data from Universal Analytics and then GA4 data when reporting? Or will data from Universal Analytics and the data from GA4 have to be reported separately in separate widgets? So to answer that, so no, it doesn't have to be reported in separate widgets. It can be blended in different, in a single widget. And also with the data transfer, we provide free data visualization from BigQuery. So we do provide data transfer as both standalone product and an add-on to our current Watergraph plans. And we do provide visualization from BigQuery. So whatever way you set it up, you don't have to report on data separately. It can be blended either on a BigQuery side or either on different sources. So and another interesting question by Norma saying that her team is feeling overwhelmed at the thought of learning how to use BigQuery. Would your solution potentially eliminate the need to use BigQuery directly? And I think the answer to that is yes, definitely. That's exactly what our product team is hoping to achieve. And basically, it's quite easy to transfer data to BigQuery, say from Google Analytics 4 or other advertising platforms. And then you can connect and visualize that data in Watergraph. And you don't need to learn BigQuery, SQLs, or anything like that. You can just easily pick the widgets. We have pre-made widgets, and you can select the metrics that you want to display, pulling data from BigQuery. Carlos is our product expert. I'm not sure if he would like to elaborate anything more on that. Or Carlos, do you think I answered it?
I think you have answered it already, Linus. So yeah, the goal of our data transfer function is to eliminate the need to use BigQuery daily. What in Norma's case, what you would need to do is just set up a BigQuery account, and that's it. Then you can connect Watergraph and let do Watergraph the job for you and move the data, and then you can get with Watergraph data back from the BigQuery which you need.
Yeah, and a couple more questions on the cost. Quite a few people are asking. So as I mentioned previously, the data transfer is sold as a standalone, which includes visualization in BigQuery only, or as an add-on to the other Watergraph plans, which allow connecting and visualizing and sharing data from 40 different sources. So the data transfer starts from 7 to 9 euros per month, or that's still somewhat under $100 for one transfer. And we do, if you need several sources, we do provide quite big discounts if you need several transfers. So the cost really goes down the more transfers you need. And I think there was also a question about do we have something once off? So the answer is we don't kind of offer data transfer as a once off. However, I mean, if you use it for some time and you don't need it anymore, you can always cancel our subscription. So I mean, this is you're not going to be locked into several years of contract. So once you don't need it, you can always cancel it. And I would suggest, though, that with Google Analytics 4, you will still need to store that data. So potentially what some of you could do is use Watergraph to transfer universal analytics data, your historical data, and then use it to store your Google Analytics 4 data, which will be deleted. So yeah, I hope that answered that. Yeah, and there was another question in the Q&A section. So is Watergraph acting like a Zapier, a connector between data warehouse and all the sources? So the answer to that is yes, kind of. However, Watergraph has much more benefits, such as the whole data visualization aspect. So with Zapier, obviously, you cannot visualize the data. Watergraph does provide data visualization from a warehouse as well. So Watergraph is a lot more than just a connector. Maybe I seen Carlos came off mute. Maybe he would like to add anything there.
Not actually. Zapier is a bit different tool. It is more for automation things. So our Watergraph tool is first of all for visualization of your data, and also now you can move the data from your source to your data warehouse. So you can call it like an automated way how to move the data, because you will not do anything manually. So in this way, Zapier might be similar, but actually it's a bit different tool. But to summarize that, once you will have connected your source and your data warehouse to Watergraph, you will not need to do anything else. Watergraph will be doing the job for you.
Sounds good. And Daniel again asked, is this purely about storing historical data for reference and not about pushing it to GA4 in any way? And to my knowledge, it's not really possible to push your universal analytics data to Google Analytics 4. These are like different platforms with different designs. Google Analytics 4 is more events-based rather than like session-based like universal analytics. It's not possible to merge them in Google Analytics 4. If you want to blend with data, you need to store it in data warehouse, such as BigQuery. And then once the data is stored in the warehouse, it's easy to blend it in using Watergraph, for example, or if you're really advanced in databases, you can blend it in a data warehouse itself or attempt to do it, but that's a complex solution. It's not going to be easy, and that's what Watergraph makes it easy to blend the data after it's stored in BigQuery. You can also connect just directly to GA4 using Watergraph and blend it that way. That's also possible. However, obviously, at some point, your universal analytics data will go away. So we still recommend it being stored in data warehouse. Yes, we're happy to share the insights, Bonnie, and hopefully, yeah, it was educational and useful for everyone. Okay, I'm not sure if we have any more questions. So thanks everyone again for attending. We will probably have more educational webinars that we will run about different topics. So keep an eye for Watergraph webinars and Watergraph content. I would encourage to follow us on LinkedIn, on our social media channels. Keep an eye on our blog. Yeah, we do try to cover the topic of client reporting. And yeah, we will be sending recorded video and to your email. And if by somehow it lands in spam, if you don't get it, check out Watergraph YouTube channel. And there is a recording of our previous webinar, and give us a couple of days to upload this one too. Okay, so thanks again. Thanks, Carlos and Laurinas, for being my co-hosts and sharing all their knowledge as well. And wish everyone a great evening.